returning to the safe place. So I'm working our way through some parables. We'll do some New Testament parables, and I will even dabble in some Old Testament parables at some point in time, and I will do it until God says you can stop talking about the parables, Leslie. There are a lot of them. And so this particular parable is familiar to us as the parable of the prodigal son. And I'm hoping today we'll be able to experience a very familiar story anew. From Luke 15:11 through 32. And he said, "There was a man who had 2 sons. The younger of them said to his father, 'Father, give me the share of the property that's coming to me.' And he divided his property between them. Not many days later, the younger son gathered all that he had and took a journey into a far country, and there he squandered his property in reckless living. And when he had spent everything, a severe famine arose in that country, and he began to be in need. And so he went and he hired himself out to one of the citizens of that country, who sent him into the fields to feed pigs. And he was longing to be fed with the pods that the pigs ate, and no one gave him anything. But when he came to himself, he said, 'How many of my father's hired servants have more than enough bread, but I perish here with hunger? I will arise and go to my father, and I will say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you, and I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me as one of your hired servants.' And he rose and he came to his father, but while he was still long a way off, his father saw him and felt compassion, and ran and embraced him and kissed him. And the son said to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. But the father said to his servants, Bring quickly the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his hand and the shoes on his feet, and bring the fattened calf and kill it, and let us eat and celebrate. For this my son was dead and is alive again. He was lost and he's now found.' And then he began to celebrate. Now his older son, who was in the field, and he came in and drew near to the house, and he heard the music and the dancing, and he called one of the servants and asked, 'What's going on?' And then he said to him, 'Your brother has come, and your father's killed the fattened calf, and because we received him back safe and sound.' But he was angry, and he refused to go in. His father came out and entreated him, but he answered his father, 'Look, these many years I've served you. I've never disobeyed your command, yet you never come to me with a young goat that I might celebrate with my friends. But then this son comes, and who has devoured your property with prostitutes. You've killed the fattened calf for him.' And he said to him, 'Son, you are always with me, and all that is mine is yours. And it's fitting to celebrate and be glad, for your brother was dead and is alive. He was lost, and he is found.'" And this one is so interesting, and I love looking at the parables minutely. And where do we find ourselves in the story? Because we do. So I think of the youngest son. Perhaps he was eager to set off on his own, as you do at a coming of age. Like, I'm going to go make it happen. I'm going to do my thing. He also maybe lacked some discernment. Maybe, more than likely, made quite a few mistakes. He was embarrassed, remorseful. Sometimes we separate ourselves from others for whatever reason, and he acted impulsively. And so to bring a little bit of context to this story, during that time, it was considered a great insult to ask for your inheritance before your parents died. I would imagine that it might ring true today as well. And another part that was interesting culturally is patriarchs of the families in that culture don't go running. It would require them to hike their tunic and show bare skin. And so he, with zeal, left and went to go greet his son. And so these cultural contexts kind of help us paint a little bit of a different picture for us. So we know how the prodigal son behaved, and then you've got the oldest one who is resentful, judgmental, but he's reliable, he's loyal, he's consistent, he's angry and frustrated, he's tired, and he perhaps felt taken for granted. I can relate to both of those. And all of this time, it's so interesting that we titled this parable The Prodigal Son, because the key player, the thing that's most important in this story, is the next character, which is the father, who is loving, forgiving, generous, understanding, accepting, grateful, and unconditional. And Jesus used the parables to relate prominently because we relate with story. Are there instances where every father is this? Yes and no. I've seen families where the father may represent what the oldest son is behaving like. But here, I want to look at this story to see where in it all three of these are us. Where am I, like the oldest, who might harbor some judgment or some resentment? And then I want you to take it a step further. This isn't outward judgment and outward resentment. This is, how do I judge myself? How am I resentful of things that I've done? How am I loyal? How have I towed the line, always done what I was supposed to do, done the right thing, stayed within the confines of where I'm supposed to be? Where am I to myself been not respectful of myself, frivolous? Where have I squandered my talents, squandered my love? Perhaps I gave it freely and it was in a toxic relationship. Maybe I gave it and it's not appreciated back. So then I lean into feeling like the second son, the first son, the oldest son, who's resentful. And then where is it in this story that we can come home? And I say home loosely. I don't mean the home that you grew up in. For some, it is that home, but some people, it may not be that home. So when I say home, I mean, where is the place where you can go that is your no matter what place? No matter what you say, what you do, how you live, how you are, in that place, whoever is in that same place with you is pure, unbridled love. What is that place? It doesn't have to be the traditional home you grew up in, the home you married into. It could be that your best friend is that place. And this safe place, where is that Christ within you that no matter where you are, you can come home to it, in that welcoming home, that when you're feeling irritated or frustrated or less than, or like you don't meet the needs of society, or the error demands of society that are out of alignment, but you're expected to behave a certain way or be a certain way. But you can always come home. And I share this because for me, this June being Pride Month, and I'm part of the LGBTQIA+, and the rest of the letters that we choose to acquire. When I left a denomination, because I didn't fit the mold of who I was. I didn't, not 1 second, question God's love for me. Not once. And when I chose to leave, I didn't leave God. I left an institution. We can leave institutions, we can leave relationships, we can leave things that no longer serve our highest good, that might cause our bodies to retract in ways that dampen our Christ light. So we get the opportunity to be able to center in and know that when I sit with my Christ self, I am loved unconditionally, no matter what, not only because God loves you, but because you are that. You are that. You are that spark of divine love. You are that spark of divine light. You are that expression of God that nobody else on the face of the earth can express at all. Nobody can shine like you shine. Nobody can shine like I shine. Some people maybe go and thank God for that. But how we express ourselves uniquely brings us in this prodigal son story to know that when we get caught up in our humanness, when we get caught up in the unrealistic expectations we may give ourselves, that we can set those aside and release those and come home. We can come home to the safe place that is the Christ indwelling with each of us. And then we can also, when we have that, allow us to realize where those outward safe places are. I love that this is one of those places. I love that Unity Church of Austin is the place where you can walk through those doors exactly as you are and know that you're okay here. You're safe here. You're loved here. That we see the light in you here. And not only do we see it, not only do we accept it, because we move beyond that. There was this phase where it was to tolerate. And to me, tolerate is, okay, yeah, you be you, but That's tolerance. I want celebration. I want extravagant welcome, kill the fatted calf, because everybody can come here. And so in this story of the prodigal son, some people this month that are part of the LGBTQ community may come back for the first time in a long time. They may not be to a point where they want to come back, because there's some times where there's this institution and God becomes so close to the same thing that it takes a lot of healing to be able to separate it. I was lucky that I grew up with the constant, you're loved, God loves you, that it was just part of who I was, that I didn't question it, and I didn't get the sense that I was any less than from my nucleus. But I debated whether or not to choose the prodigal son because it is certainly not this. It is not looking at anybody who walks away from an institution that they're the prodigal one. Because sometimes you have to walk away from institution to be able to come home. And it's okay. These doors are always, well, they're locked sometimes because of safety, but metaphorically, they're always open. That there's a place here. So that way, when the institution gets to fade away and become whatever lesson we picked up from it, that we have the safe place to be able to come home to. Within a spiritual home and within a spiritual community that fully supports one another in our growth. It's part of our mission. It's part of who we are. It's part of what we've come here to be. We foster, transformation and collective growth through prayer, shared study, and loving action. Loving action. And so in this time with the prodigal son story, I did give you, as I do every week, your questions to ponder. And it's interesting because I sit with them for a while too after I come up with the questions. Where do I proceed alone or feeling that I have control or that I don't need anything because I'm all that? Where do we get the I got this that makes us like the youngest son? Where do you judge yourself, thinking that I don't deserve something? Where does this judgment come from? And if you get to the point where you can realize where the judgment comes from, I want to invite you to say, here's the story that happened, true, and set it aside and allow yourself to be able to come home to the truth of your being. Where do I return to alignment, and how do I celebrate that? This is like my favorite part. I love to celebrate. Zeal being one of, aside from imagination, zeal's probably my next favorite power. Because we should be able to celebrate when we've been able to let go of something that caused us harm, that we can quickly realign and recenter, that we're like, oh, this is showing up for me. Yes, that was there. I am here. I am the presence of the Christ. Because we are. What does it feel like to be embraced by pure love? Can we do that for ourselves? I could be one of those people, when I make a mistake, I am harder on myself than the people that I've made the mistake for. Like, I'll sit in my shoulda, woulda, coulda, and waller in it for a while. Sometimes it'll take me 3 days, my full resurrection time, to come up out of it. What are some practices that we embark on to return ourselves to the safe place? Who am I in my safe place as a provider of that sanctuary? And I think that's key. Where am I in my ownership, in my agency of myself, to love myself enough to bring myself to center, to recognize the divinity that is within all of us? And then when we do that, we can look outward. Who are the others in my safe place, and where do I find them? How do I connect with them? Who's the bestie that you can call that will love you up and call you on your malarkey all at the same time? Because that's the safe place. So in this time with the prodigal son, it is not about either son completely. It is about being able to go home to where you can see the Christ higher self of you running at you like you've been away on vacation forever and a day, squealing, screaming, welcoming you, bringing you in. And if y'all are with me, folks, hug yourself for a second. You just came home. You've had a crappy day at work. Somebody's accused you of something that you didn't think that was worthy of being accused of, and it's on them. That's their business. Come home to you. The capital Y, the capital O, the capital U. Because more than any prodigal anything, more than any grumpy older brother, we are the welcoming Christ center of our own selves. And when we do that, when we come home to ourselves, our Christ light shines brighter than any light ever. And that makes more people want to come to the light so they could see the Christ that's within them. Shine on, y'all.